All right, so we did a little bit of torture testing and talked about how even though you can have images of widely varying situations, you can quickly choose one of the total tools, the super presets, the magic presets, the fast tools, and just apply those in a batch. Let's take that into a quick practical application. Here's a wedding here, and we have a wide range of images, but these are just raw images. So I've gone through, the exposure is looking pretty good on these. I've done a little bit of rating and kind of filtered down so I don't have to wait for images I don't even care about to process. I'm just gonna select all of these. What do we have? 175 in this batch. And again, I'm gonna use that same grid edit principle. I'm gonna come over here. I'm going to use the fast tools because the fast tools really do dig into some creative use of gradients and colors to really make a kind of a master process, but do it very quick. I'm just going to apply the fast masters just like that to all of these images. And we're gonna see that it's just gonna go through and start changing them. All right, so we have went through and just processed fast masters on all of these just like that. Now at this point, we can go back and we can grid edit. We can take our favorites into the develop module and use some of the more advanced color presets and mix it up a little bit. But what we're doing here is we're not only editing fast, we're getting consistency because we're taking an entire shoot or a group from an entire shoot and we're applying a look to those that looks consistent. And consistency is very important. And it's just really cool because you can say, hey, let's take the whole shoot and I'm gonna go get a cup of coffee while the previews render. And then you can come back. Now we can take our favorites and we could say, well, let's use something different on this image. Let's add a mod, let's mix it up. And you can refine as much as you want, but you can get to that proofable state. You can get to that state of the images look good, the color's corrected, the exposure looks good. And what we've done with the total tools in PW6 transcends what we've done in all the presets before it because we've really said, okay, let's torture test it. Let's make a set of tools that works in any situation. So there's always a preset that you can batch correct with that as we're going through here, we're taking these images from their base state and we can have all these creative looks. This is the cine warm. We could do the cine cool if we want a little bit of an edgy look, but that's still actually really versatile and a little bit of that classic cinema low contrast feel. And we can always just reset. You can see that we've done a lot of control and editing on these images. And we can also just come through here and do our grid edit like we talked about. Dial up the exposure on a few of these. This one's a little light. Let's drop that one a stop. Don't be afraid to just come back to that grid edit throughout the process. Let's actually come back to the torture test so we can see a wider range of images. We've talked about the basic batch edit, but let's dig in a little more with what we can do with that and how I got to some of the results I did. One of the things I do when I'm doing tests and building a toolkit and refining that is I'll take and I'll look at how we can use different presets and combine different presets. And in the examples on the site, I put those recipes. I also make a note of them in here. So here I use Supernature, Dynamic Range Mod, Exposure, Adjustment, and Backlight. Let's see what that actually looks like in practice. So if I come into here, I've got PW6 and I'm gonna reset this. So the reset A, let's come in here and I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of an in-depth look at what the presets do as we go along. Reset A resets essentially everything. It doesn't reset quite as much as Shift Command R, which is the shortcut for resetting an image. If you reset an image that way in Lightroom, it resets spot adjustments, crops, everything. Reset A resets all your develop settings. Everything from gradients and vignettes to develop processes and curves, like all the base settings. It leaves alone the crop, the lens corrections, like for distortion and some of those things. As we go down, reset B is basically the same, but it leaves your gradients alone. Reset C just resets the basic settings down below, but it leaves the basic settings rather alone, and it resets the tone curve, the color adjustments, things like that, which in this case is a lot. Okay, let's go back to 0 though and see where we started with. Obviously this image down the Tetons, it's a neat image, longer exposure, but it is dark. Okay, so let's go back. I wanna look at my notes. Supernature, Dynamic Range Mod, Exposure, and Backlight. Now there's any number of things we could do, but I'm gonna apply the Supernature and we can say, oh, the color's nice now, but it's still way too dark. Okay, let's go to exposure up, one stop. All right, so we've done a quick exposure and a quick supernature. This is an extreme scenario image, but I want to show these to show how you can combine it. Because what you have here is the total tools, super tools, which are basic versatile corrections that for the most part don't get into advanced gradients and tone limiting and things like that. You can note here that some presets have a notation like G, which means there is a gradient, or E for exposure, but until you get down to the fast, you don't really start seeing the gradients that actually limit based on tone. And that's one of the things that's very special about some of those fast presets. They will take a little longer to process because there's more crunching going on. And frankly, Lightroom's been lagging a little bit in being fast these days. Hopefully that will be fixed. But some of the new features, regardless of how you apply them, bog it down a little bit, which is why I love being able to do these in batches because it makes advanced edits very fast, okay? The magic tools are, again, for specific things. A lot of those do actually affect exposure and dramatic things, and they're named in such a way that you can try and target them to the problem you're having. In this case, I applied a basic, good, saturated, contrasty supernature effect. I did the exposure up. Now let's actually go down to Pixel Forge, though. Let's use Pixel Forge, and the new Pixel Forge in PW6 is really nice because it's so much faster. You can see that in the new Pixel Forge, we've broken it out into categories so you can quickly get to where you want. So if you look at each preset, it tells you what panel it's modifying. That's the beauty of Pixel Forge and the thing to understand. You can apply any of these total presets and then come down and modify a specific module to give it a different look while leaving everything else alone. And that's how we've established this kind of stackability that has become so important to PW6 as we started introducing these ideas 2 or 3 versions ago, but it's getting really refined. So you have tone, you have color, surface, and at the bottom here, you have local adjustments or gradients. Now, then you can go down and we have the tint category and the finish mods. Okay, so very intuitive, it's flowy. We've designed PW6 to be top down. So you open this up, you come into the images, and the tools you're likely to need the most are right at the top. Tools for quickly correcting a problem, tools for working with a batch of images, regardless of the size or the context. That's what PW6 is all about, is bringing creativity into efficiency. Okay, what else did we have? We applied supernature and exposure up. Let's go down to the mods and let's actually use the dynamic range pusher to pull back some of that dynamic range, because to get this image lighter, I want to actually use the backlight curve and I want to be able to maintain. Now look at that. In just a few clicks, what have we done? We've gone from here to here. Okay, so a lot of times people will come and they'll say, well, I want a list of what all the presets do. I want recipes. And I'm kind of giving you some recipes here, but PW6, it almost doesn't even need a training video. And one of the things we put a lot of time into on this is making this intuitive. If you start with a total process and then carry down the line and just keep adding modifications until you get the look that you want, it's going to look really good, and you can get images that really look phenomenal, okay? So let's take a look at this one. Let's actually reset this, okay? So I'm going reset all, reset A, and nice image, a little bit of light spill coming from the left and a little bit dark, okay? What I'm gonna start with is fast strobe. Fast strobe I made specially for situations where we're using artificial light, because a lot of presets that do a lot of control of highlights and things like that will mess up an image with a strobe. Now, don't be afraid to try any preset or combination of presets on any image. As you use, especially these category 1 tools, you're gonna quickly learn, because we've kept them simple, what images work the best for your situation. But strobe and other names that we've designed, we've kind of said, okay, this will get you there quick. It's already looking good, it's brightening it up, it's controlling the dynamic range, but we're not mushing it down. Watch what happens if I really back off on highlights. In a lot of images, I could go back to 60 or 70 on highlights and it would look fine. But on a strobe image, there's a lot of highlight going on and it just really screws it up. Okay, we've applied strobe. What else do we need to do? Let's actually go down to the mods in the tone, and let's use the shadow pusher to just bring some more detail out of those shadows, the dark hair, the background. There we go. That's a little bit better. And now we really want to draw the emphasis to them. It's too light over here. I could manually hit the M key and start putting gradients and things like that, or I could go down to the key mods. These mods are right down below the total tools because you're going to use them a lot. Things like the Radi Spot Light, the Radi Spot Dark, things like, in this case, let's use the triple grad. We're just going to click on that, and okay, so things just changed pretty radically. We just applied 3 grads at once. Now, there's no way for us to design a preset where the grad always falls exactly where you want, but this is much more than a vignette, because we can now just hit that M key, and you'll see all these grads that have just popped up in here. This has a grad and a spot, okay? And so we can go down here and we can take off different levels. We can just adjust, right? I'm darkening them too much here, so I'm gonna bring some of that back, but I'm gonna click this spot, quickly adjust it. I'm actually gonna darken this one a little more, and I'm gonna dial this one back on their heads because I don't want them fading to black on the hair there, okay? So we can quickly adjust these different grads. We can grab them, we can move them around. We can do all the things that you do with grads. Now let's do Shift and M, and we're gonna bring up, you can see the spot pop up for it, the pre-installed grad here, and we're gonna move it right over their face. So what is this doing? It's darkening, or in this case, there's 2 kinds of these Radi Spot type style, and you can also apply them individually. The Radi Spot Light, which lightens the spot that the circle surrounds. Okay, that's a powerful one. And we've done both in PW6. Radi Spot Dark darkens everything on the outside, whereas Radi Spot Light lightens everything on the inside. In this case, we're brightening up the subject a little bit while leaving everything else alone, and boom, we've just achieved the look that we were going for. I love the triple because it quickly applies 3 grads and a radial, and you can really draw the focus. It's all about tone and drawing the focus in to the subject, okay? But what happens if we apply the Radi Spot Dark? This acts a little more like a vignette, and so we can see that it doesn't lighten them, it leaves them alone, but it darkens everything on the outside, okay? So as we move it away, right here. In this case, the Radi Spot Light works better because it leaves everything else alone, but it lightens them up substantially as we spotlight them. Looks amazing. Okay, so we've talked about how to use these tools. Let's just take a couple different images and a couple different situations. So if I reset this one, you see that it's a night image. It's very dark. This actually did well at international competitions, but a problem with these night long exposure, high ISO scenes is you do tend to get a very flat image. And so you'll also see down in the color perfect, not only some creative effects and targeted effects, but you'll also see things like nightscape, which are targeted specifically to use a lot of backlight and a lot of intensity to really bring out certain situations. So I can apply nightscape, maybe manually work with the white balance a little bit to get it dialed in where I want, and just quickly change things over. So these color perfects, these again are pretty much total process. These are gonna modify most of the settings over here in the develop module, although most of them leave alone things like sharpening and noise and stuff like that, so that you can kind of do that on your own or just go with the default. Okay, let's go and just look at a couple more. We're really moving fast here, but it's so powerful. It's so easy to pull this off, okay? Let's take something like this. And again, let's look at a reset on this one, okay? And this is a good example of using the magic tools. The magic tools aren't always for images you screwed up. They're just magic tools that work good on certain images. So for example, we might use the magic dark booster to fix an image that's too dark. But the magic portrait is just a very versatile portrait tool that we can apply to anything. If anything, this one's a tad light, but let's apply magic portrait. The exposure is actually really good on this one, and just let that crank away on there. And here we have this really nice portrait process, and I'm just gonna combine that with the Radi vignette. Now a classic vignette, again, is just darkening the edges, but a Radi vignette, you can click on it and you can just hit that Shift M and you can move it around. So again, you can adjust the size. I can just click the boundaries. And since this is a vignette style, it's darkening whatever is outside of it. So in this case, I'm basically gonna vignette everything but Yara here, and boom, there we go. from here to here, just like that. There it goes. Catch up, Lightroom. I'm recording high-res video at the same time as doing this. So, okay, so here's an example, though, where I didn't do it right. I just exposed this too dark, okay? And you can look at our histogram. You can see this is way too dark. And again, the magic presets are great go-tos for this. Let's use the Magic Dark Booster, which is a very powerful tool. And just like that, we're going to bring this back and bring some life into it. Boom. Wow. It looks really cool. But what's the problem here? The problem is we lightened up her face, but we're actually getting too much information in some of the surrounding area. So I'm just going to use the triple, which is the grad and the spot, and I'm going to click that. And we're just going to apply. Boom, that's better. But now let's customize those grads a little bit. For example, this one, I'm really going to darken down and the highlights and just play with it. So you have a very simple selection of tools here that you can control. I'm going to do the highlights and the exposure. Again, taking that foreground foliage and really just darkening it down makes it very powerful. I'm going to take this, draw it down a little bit more, and then we will take our third spot and let's actually bring it in a little bit more and tilt it a little just to darken these other areas in here. Shift M is going to bring up my spot, and I'm going to put that right over her so that everything else is darkened, or rather that she is lightened. But I'm not going to lighten too much. I'm actually going to dial this back just a little bit, give it a little bit of highlight correction. So you see how we're actually, with one or two presets now, we're combining what would be 20 different steps if we were doing this manually. It's not about taking control away from the editing process. It's about giving you control, okay? Where do we go from there, though? We have an image. We like the way it looks. Everything's coming together, right? How do we finish that? The image looks good. I've dialed it in. I've used my mods, my Pixel Forge, my exposure, and I've edited my grads, and I've put everything right where I want it to be. I'm going to take my grad. I probably use triple on this one too because it's very good. It's so fast to just be able to select a grad, use it as is, or move it around a little bit and quickly adjust those sliders. And that way you're not creating all these new grads all the time. I'm going to go down here and let's actually go to color. And I'm just going to do the portrait color mod to bring a little bit more life into her skin there. That looks great. Now, this is a beautiful image, and on a finished image, I am still going to take this into Photoshop before I print it, before I go to final, because there's nothing that replaces on the absolute best images doing pixel level editing. You just don't do that in the raw edit, but you get 90% of it, and that's what really saves you the time. Now, what we can do here is we can come down and say, okay, let's finish it up. And that's where we can come in and we can use noise reduction. We can use the filmic grain, but there's one that's actually my favorite, and that's why it's up here in the key mods. I use it on pretty much everything. It's the Film Magic Detail. It's a little bit of noise reduction, a little bit of grain, a little bit of sharpening, and you may not even be able to see it on the video, but it really just brings in that little bit of detail. Let me come into another image here that's got a ton of detail, and we'll just zoom in. This is an A7R2 file, and we'll come down here, and let me see if I can show you this. There's also at the bottom here, reset grain and sharp at the bottom of the finish mods. So you can set those to defaults. Now, if I zoom in here, you can see that it really does look good, but I'm just gonna go up here and I'm gonna use Film Magic Detail 3, and we're just gonna see a little bit of sharpening, a little bit of grain, and a little bit of detail. And it's hard to see it on a screen like this, but this actually is a very powerful finish prep tool, and I use this a lot, but I do it at the very end of the step. If I'm taking an image into Photoshop, I'll often actually do this afterward on that final image. And now you can just see it's just razor sharp. It looks really good. There is another one in here that's really cool. We've updated and refined everything in PW6, even though there's themes from previous versions, and we've just made it so much more efficient. But you can see this, we've done quite a bit of exposure correction, and it was already a very dark, challenging image done late at night. Really came out beautifully though, but let's actually look at what we had for noise and stuff in this. And if you see, we have quite a bit of noise. If we just reset this to default, there's some color noise, there's some luminance noise. For the heavier images, the ISO scrubber is good. This is geared specifically towards images that are darker, higher ISO that are struggling. And with just a single click, I can run that ISO scrubber and it's going to apply noise reduction, grain, and sharpening to maintain detail, but still give a very natural look. And it is a very powerful effect. Okay, so the bottom line is, regardless of what you're shooting, you can really come through here and you can say, I need a look. I need it to look good. I need it to look good fast. Whatever you need, it works. The goal in PW6 was not only to make an image for everything, to make things as one-click automation for batches as possible, but then to allow you an infinite amount of control, stackability, and variations to come down here. Whether it's using the color perfect, let's put Latin Romance on this. Now, I had my strobe overexposing a bit on this one, so I'm going to apply the Latin Romance, and then I'm going to come up here to our key mods, and I'm going to do exposure down by a bit here, and just bring this down even a little bit more and really dial that back, because I overexposed that one quite a bit. And so we start here and we go here with just a couple of clicks, right? So the potential, the power there is a lot. Again, you also have a lot of things. If you're dealing with a struggle, I would suggest starting with one of the magic presets, something like this where you had harsh light. We've done a lot of work over the years on the magic harsh sun fixer. It is very powerful, and the refinements on this have been so subtle and refined, and we've tested it on so many images to just really give a lot of control. Red reception fix, that's kind of obvious. It's that red skin. It's just problematic. Magic dynamic. So the magic presets are great for problem images, but also for images that aren't problem images. The fast presets are creative control that brings in gradients and colors, and just in a really fluid way that you can apply in batches. The super presets, they work with almost anything, and it's a great way to start, although I find myself starting with the fast presets oftentimes. The key mods, important things like radial spots and vignettes, the quick grads, and things like even lens correct auto, and just stuff that in one click you can save yourself going over and searching through the develop module. Color perfect over in category 3, get it into some control, but also some more creative things like bringing in a bit of cross lights and stuff like that. This one, the magical cross, I think is what we have on this image here. Just a lot of versatility so you can get some creative color. We have collections that are dedicated to doing more tricky things with color and mixing and cross processing. We have collections that are dedicated to black and white, and those are great. But the thing is that PW6 gives you a foundation collection. So whether you want color, whether you want a quick black and white process on a batch of images with the fast silver, whatever it is you're going for, you can quickly get a good look. Then you can come down, you got your Pixel Forge for tones, colors, surface, gradients. You've got your split toning, so you can mix those with a black and white and get a sepia look. You can mix those with a color and get a little bit of tinting and cross-processing, and then you come down to your detail tools. Guys, PW6 is really powerful. It's really easy to use, and if you put it to work and just follow it from a top-down approach, you're going to edit faster. You're going to get more creativity. You're going to learn more about what's happening in your images and how to make them better in camera, and it's just better editing. Hope you enjoy, and let me know if you have any questions.